Hello, welcome to the Champions Round Show. My name is Jason Gold, and I am welcome to the show. I'm joined by Dan Titus again. Hopefully, you listened to us last time. Made a little bit of money on the NBA draft. We had a great time. We hit a couple big bets, and we're back for more. We're going to talk about a little NBA free agency. We are going to talk about some NFL news and notes, some fantasy stuff going into the season, and some top flight wide receivers that you should be targeting in your drafts. Dan, welcome to the show again. How you doing?
What's up, Jason? Always great to be a guest on the show, man. Love the Champions Round. Make sure, if you guys don't already, follow Champions Round. Make sure to subscribe to their YouTube channel, as well as download the app, man. They got a lot of cool games coming up. So excited to keep playing with y'all and talk about NBA, and obviously fantasy football season is right ahead of us.
So we do have a lot of great stuff coming up on Champions Round. Thanks for shouting that out. We have a big announcement coming on August 9th. We will be debuting a couple of cash game modes, so stay tuned for that. Follow us on all of the social channels. But that's not what we're here for right now. We're here to talk about some NBA free agency stuff and what happened on draft night. The biggest one, and we'll kick this off with what's most important to my heart, is the Lakers have Russell Westbrook. What was your first reaction to that trade? And heading into that trade, it seemed like the Lakers were going to get Buddy Hield, and then out of nowhere, it flipped. They have Westbrook and now have this very interesting old roster that, if healthy, could be great, but looks a little interesting on paper.
Yeah, we were texting as free agency really kicked off, and as soon as that blockbuster, I mean, this was kind of rumored a couple of days before it actually happened when Monday hit, but my first reaction was like, they're getting another superstar. I think that was what they were missing last year, was someone else to really, take care of the ball. It was supposed to be Dennis Schroeder. We saw how bad that really turned out. Like, he unfollowed him on Instagram, and now he turned down like what, $80 million ish, and now
$80 million, yeah.
Now he's sitting on the streets looking at everybody else like, damn, I'm the only one that doesn't have a bag now. So he kind of screwed himself. But back to Westbrook, I think as a basketball mind, like, I think that it's going to be definitely a challenge of like, who's going to have to sacrifice as a part of being a part of this new big three in Los Angeles. And, I think Bron and Westbrook's games are pretty similar in terms of their always needing the ball in their hands to create. And we know Westbrook isn't that good of a shooter. So I'm curious. I think that the Lakers actually really won the free agency this year because they stacked the deck. And you're right, there is a lot of age on that squad with Ariza, Carmelo Anthony, a few other guys, but I think they helped themselves out a lot by getting young players like Kendrick Nunn and Malik Monk, who played really well last season, shot 40% from 3-point land, averaged 24 and 4 over per 36 average. So he's definitely a microwave bucket off the bench, which I think will really help the Lakers. That was their problem last year, was their depth, and I think they solved that.
So I have a couple thoughts on Westbrook. One, I think this is something that they were really searching for here, was during the regular season, Westbrook is going to bring it every single night. Like, LeBron can take nights off. AD can be injured. He's obviously going to be injured and miss whatever games he's going to miss.
That's probably inevitable.
Russ is going to bring it, and he's going to be probably pretty healthy. He generally plays a lot of games. And you saw on Washington last year when Beal went out, he carried them. They were very good when he was leading the charge, and he's not going to have to put as much on his shoulders. What I'm hoping for as a Laker fan is that Frank Vogel and his defensive style will get Russ to lock in a little bit more on that end. And some of the other free agents who they brought in, who are 40% shooters, who are not known for their defense, hopefully they'll be much improved on that end of the floor. And I agree with you. There were some great signs. Was a great does not quit ever. He always goes all the way at it. And I think that's something that LeBron's going to love. I think it's something that AD is going to learn from. And I think the entire Lakers season, honestly, I mean, as it always does, health. You have an aging LeBron, an aging Westbrook, and you have AD, who's always hurt. If they're healthy, this all comes down to, does AD want to play the 5? How does he do playing the 5? And if he's successful at that and doesn't get hurt banging bodies with some of the bigger dudes in the league, I mean, I think that they're NBA champions again in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely slated to play the 5. He should be, because I mean they're going to bring back Marcus Gasol is going to be there. They signed Dwight Howard once again, but I think that's just big man depth at that point. But at their best lineup, to close out the game, you're going to need AD at the 5. That just makes complete sense, especially with the team that they've just built around them, getting all these different shooters and veteran players that can play those big minutes down the stretch. Ariza's not young, Melo's not young, but these are the guys that you can rely on in short spurts. When you'll need him most to be clutch. And to take your point, go back to your point about Westbrook and his ability to never take nights off. I think that will bleed into the Lakers fabric a little bit, because this dude's a dog, and like, he's from LA. I think he's going to be even more motivated to not only get a chip, but also play in front of the home crowd. And he played obviously college in UCLA. So I think it's going to really be a good fit, even though basketball technically, obviously him and Bron aren't the best shooters, and they kind of play the same kind of position in terms of their impact on the game, triple doubles almost at will. So it's going to be fun to watch. Like, as much as as a basketball purist, I'm not excited about everyone just taking pay cuts and going to the Lakers. I think the Lakers are probably going to be the odds-on favorite right now to win the title. It's going to be them and the Nets. And to be honest, this is going to be on LeBron, man. No excuses. He's already come out on Twitter saying, like, save all that narrative of us being old. Come with the same energy. You better come with the same energy if you guys don't win.
Yeah, absolutely. The other part about the Lakers free agency that I thought was interesting, let Caruso walk and keep THT. And I like loves what he that they believe that THT can be their shooting guard, and it has a higher floor defensively to guard more positions than Caruso did. Caruso's a great perimeter defender, but doesn't have the sort of length that you need maybe to cover some of LeBron or Westbrook's laziness or middle of the season, and they just don't want to try as hard. And maybe they think the THT is more maybe lightning in a bottle, maybe something they can capture there. But they gave him, basically the same contracts. What were you letting Caruso go and keeping THT?
I think it was a great move. I think that you saw last year that this guy is, like, obviously a piece that you can build around. I think he actually surprised, depending on where he got drafted. I don't think that they were expecting him to be as successful as a baller as he is, but he's shown when given minutes he can produce. And I think it's a bit of addition by subtraction. Alex Caruso was certainly one of the best Laker favorites. Obviously he played really well on both sides of the ball. He played great with LeBron. His plus minus on the court with LeBron was one of the league's best. So I think it's certainly going to hurt them a bit, but I do like that they got Wayne Ellington, another shooter. Defensively, he's not going to bring it, but I think it's really about surrounding Westbrook and LeBron with shooters. And I think Talen Horton-Tucker has proven that he's going to be one of those ascending shooters on that team once he's given more time. They also signed Kent Bazemore, and we already talked about the other one in Malik Monk. So I think that they did really well by giving him a pretty favorable contract. He's super young, so I think this is one of those guys that they can lock up as a development talent once one of those aging veterans kind of fades into the sunset.
I think the other part about this potentially is that in signing Horton-Tucker to like $10 million a year or whatever he got, they do have one big trade asset left if he pops, right? He's $10 million a year. He can get traded to pretty much any team. If they need to make a big mid-season move, he's the guy you move out. It's kind of like the Kuzma deal, although Kuzma stinks. But Kuzma was making $15 million a year, and he was a young piece. In theory, if you needed to make a trade, he's the centerpiece. And he ended up being one. He got traded for Russell Westbrook. And he's the only player that Washington, I think, probably cares about. I don't think they care about KCP or Trez. So maybe do the same thing with Horton-Tucker. He's certainly going to have more value, I would think, going forward than Caruso is. So from that perspective, I understand the move. I do want to mention some other teams here. It's not just a Lakers-centric podcast.
I'm about to say, we got to get some other teams here.
Yeah, exactly. Two of the other teams in the East that I thought were very interesting that I want to talk about are what Miami did and what Chicago did. And I kind of want to lead with, and I'll let you kind of run down what they did this offseason. But I thought it was very, very interesting and certainly makes them a 3 or 4 or a contender for the top 3 or 4 seed in the East.
So Chicago, man, I think that they really did a lot. They got DeMar DeRozan, they got Alex Caruso, they got I'm missing a guy here. DeRozan, Caruso, Lonzo Ball. That's right. Yeah. So they're obviously going to run this 3-guard front where Zach LaVine, he'll probably slide off to the small forward spot in some cases. It would switch with DeMar DeRozan. But, I think instantly this team propelled themselves from a fringe playoff team, like a 9-10 seed, to easily a playoff team. I don't know that I'm going to put them ahead of the Sixers quite yet, just because this team is very young. And honestly, DeMar DeRozan is probably the most seasoned veteran in terms of playoff experience, because Vucevic hasn't sniffed the playoffs since he's really been in the league. So, I think that this is a really good foundational squad here. They still have yet to determine what they want to do with marketing, but I think if you have a really good defender in Lonzo Ball, who's proven, this past season that he's really improved his 3-point percentage. So I think he's got a shooter there. You still got Kobe White as like the certified 6th man off the bench, which I think was actually the better role for him. We saw him really struggle during the season with his turnovers, lack of playmaking ability. So I think him becoming that instant offense off the bench makes a lot of sense. But then you got a solid guy in DeMar DeRozan, who last year had a really good season. He averaged like a career high in assists for the Spurs, and he does a little bit of everything. Can't really shoot, but that's why you have a volume scorer like Zach LaVine on side of him. So I love what the Bulls did. And to talk about the Heat just made moves. I'm not a fan of re-signing Jimmy Butler for 4 years, $184 million. Like, that's just a ton of money for a dude that's honestly, I feel like he's on the tail end of his career. Like, he's already past his prime. Like, I think he's in it right now, but I think he's on the downside of that prime position there. But you also got re-signed Duncan Robinson, which was huge. This is one of the best shooters in the NBA. And then you also go out and you grab Victor Oladipo for pretty much a prove-it deal, which I think is much to be expected because he was injury-prone the last couple of seasons. So I think he needs to kind of build up his stock again to get a bigger contract. But I love what they did there. This team's going to be, I think that they already are above the Sixers, who have done next to nothing in free agency so far. I think the Bulls easily are the strongest movers up the depth chart in terms of rankings. And then you look at the Miami Heat, who are right there, probably the 4th best team in the Eastern Conference right now, behind the Nets, the Bucks, and I would say I got to say the Hawks, man. We didn't talk about the Hawks, but I like what they did in free agency as well, re-signing John Collins, which I was kind of surprised about, but it makes a lot of sense given their run in this last postseason.
Seems like Collins, just to hit on the Hawks real quick, it seems like Collins, once he got under Nate McMillan, just took off. So he was a guy that they were going to get rid of. I think at midseason they're like, oh, let's send him out. And now a couple months later, he signed for $125 or whatever he got. I mean, pretty good little change for just getting a new head coach. Gotta like that deal for himself.
Yeah, getting rid of Lloyd Pierce was like the best thing that ever happened for the Hawks, right? It unlocked John Collins. Bogdanovich became like one of their better players. And then they're still getting DeAndre Hunter back next season, which is why I'm really excited about this team. Cam Reddish just showed up in the playoffs, it would seem like. So if this team gets healthy, the Hawks are going to be really dangerous.
I actually think there's a move to be made. If Sacramento really has Buddy Hield on the market, which they clearly do, but maybe
they do.
Maybe it was very specific to the Lakers, and apparently the Lakers are so interested. I have no idea how that would work at all. But if the Hawks decide to go after Buddy Hield and put Reddish on the market along with some other piece to make the contracts work, I think that would be a big time move. I would love to see that for Atlanta.
Yeah, I just want to touch on a couple other really big extensions. Trae Young got the bag. He signed a nice little $200 million deal. So did Steph Curry, who signed his second $200 million contract to re-up with the Warriors. He will not leave the Warriors, it looks like, for the remainder of his career. And a couple other notes. Norman Powell re-signed with the Blazers for like a cool 90 million. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got 172 million. That deal can go up to 200 million to stay with the Thunder. So I thought that was great. And we talked about this last time for the draft. Were you surprised that the Thunder didn't do more to get more assets around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
Absolutely. I thought what they did was, and we can talk about the draft a little bit, but I thought that given the amount of assets that they had, them not moving up, I'm assuming they tried to move up, but they have 3,000 first round picks. You have enough assets to go and move up. And the reason that you have this many assets is that you can afford to overpay. If you really like a guy, go overpay for him. If the Cavs wanted 3 first round picks from you specifically to go get Evan Mobley, guess what? You have him. If you really love the guy, go get him. So I understand, the organization is all about extracting value, and they don't want to lose trades, which is fine at some point. But you've already won enough trades. You have all of this. There's a point at which you clearly have a point guard who is something special. You just gave him $200 million or up to $200 million. Why are you going to waste that money? You're wasting $40 million a year by not putting anything around him. Great. Right. If you're using 2027 and 2029 first round picks and you want to utilize those, Gil's just gonna be like 32 by the time that those guys are in the league. Like, go trade those guys. So yeah, I think it's a little crazy. If they want to wait a year until they have a little bit more set, fine. But then they traded out of 16 or whatever to the Rockets, one of the rivals in their division, and they go out and get Sagoon or whatever, the guy who's destroying the U.S. Like
who would have been a great fit in the Thunder, dude. Like
he would have been great.
I don't understand it.
Or Garuba or one of those guys who are international. If you want to stash them for a year, fine. But you just trade away the pick for another pick that's going to be a first round pick in 2031 or whatever. Like, is that like? I think,
and you got to think: is there scouting that good that they're already looking at kids that are probably in like 9th grade, 7th grade right now that they're waiting to bank on in like 2028? Like, I don't get it. Like
they're trying to scout like LeBron's like future grandson or something. Like that's their long-term goal here.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know what they're doing. I wish that they would have made a bigger splash to go up and get like a Mobley, or even go out and use those if the Cavs are dead set on taking Mobley, go trade for Jared Allen. He got $20 million a year, 5 years, $100 million from the Cavs. At some point, they're gonna get rid of Allen because Allen and I get what the Cavs are doing, right? Allen and Mobley, they're both good players. The Cavs are so bad. Just take as many good players as you can and re-sign them if they're on your team. That's fine. They're tradable. At some point, you'll get some return for them. Oklahoma City, they're going to take Mobley. Okay. What do you want for Jared Allen? You want us to re-sign him for $500, sign and trade, and we'll give you a first-round pick and whenever. We got 80 of them. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think that.
And I think you're right, though. Evan Mobley is definitely, like, to me, he's a prototypical 5 in today's NBA. So, like, you don't really need Jared Allen beyond, like, maybe this year. So I don't know. I don't understand what they're waiting on. But I just want to circle back real quick. I neglected to mention that Kyle Lowry is also on the Heat, which is also like a huge deal. Pretty good. I thought that he was going to choose somewhere else, like maybe the Pelicans or perhaps the Sixers, but apparently him and Jimmy Butler go way back. They're boys, so it makes a lot of sense. And I think for a sign and trade to get rid of Dragic and replace it with Kyle Lowry, that's a nice move. So the Miami Heat are definitely going to be a really tough team, but the Nets are still making moves. Maybe they end up with Kuzma. It doesn't look like it because what's his name? Trez and Kuzma are still looking like they're going to stay with the Wizards, but they got rid of Spencer Dinwiddie. But honestly, they drafted really well. They got Cam Thomas late in the draft. I think the Nets are going to be just fine. They traded Landry Shamet to the Suns. The rich just keep getting richer. They got Patty Mills, which I think was a great selection. Just another offensive talent for them to deploy, man. And I don't know. As a Sixers fan, I'm worried. They're like the only team that has made like 0 moves. They signed Andre Drummond. Like, awesome. Great. The guy that Embiid like just lives in his head. He called him a bum like several different times. Like, what are we doing? I don't know what they're doing.
I have a note on my sheet here that I thought one of my favorite signings of the entire offseason was Patty Mills. to the Nets. I mean, that is so perfect for them. Come off the bench, the guy's
Yep.
played in 100 big games for the Spurs, and he gets
Yep.
better in the play. He always seems to be in the right spot in the playoffs. It's kind of how like Dan Green used to be, and maybe it's a Spurs thing. They're just
Must be.
those guys in the big moments. They were there. I love Patty Mills. Hopefully, he doesn't destroy USA basketball too badly tonight for Australia.
Right.
But I thought that was a great sign for them. And you mentioned it, Cam Thomas. I mean, I think that lightning in a bottle in terms of shooting coming off the bench for the Nets. Not that they need any more scoring, but for a second unit, those two are going to be special. I think that they did a great job. What do you think of what the Knicks are doing? They were one that was kind of a head scratcher to me. I didn't quite understand the Fournier signing. I thought that the Nerlens Noel 3-year, $32 million was maybe the most egregious contract that was given out this offseason. I just really surprised the direction that they're going. Although they did get Kemba today, so maybe that's good. Kemba at the Garden, we know what that looks like. Maybe he has a little bit more magic left in him. But I was a little confused about what their direction is right now.
Yeah, I think the Kemba signing kind of saved their free agency. I wasn't thrilled with the Evan Fournier fit, especially because Tibbs is more of a defensive-minded head coach, and Fournier is not really that. Like, he's a good scorer, but also not a super reliable scorer that hasn't been on a winning franchise yet. You know, it's been kind of buried in the Magic. So I don't see him just miraculously turning around and being this 22-point bucket getter for a team that is already centered around building around RJ Barrett and Julius Randle. It got him a little bit more scoring, but that's not enough that's going to propel the Knicks to anything more than where they were. I think they overachieved this season. I think you'll see them regress a little bit more back to where they should be, around that 7th, 8th seed in the playoffs. Kemba Walker's got bad knees now. You re-signed Derrick Rose, which is great, but other than that, for what they paid, they spent $125 million between Derrick Rose and Evan Fournier. I feel like you're probably better off spending that money on a better player, a younger player, or just waiting and just running back what you had. I don't know. That's a lot of money to invest in Evan Fournier to me.
Yeah, I love Derrick Rose, and obviously Tibbs and Rose is an awesome tandem. But to give him that many years at this stage of his career seems a little ridiculous to me. I didn't quite understand that. I really didn't understand anything they did other than get a great buyout in Kemba. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Bring him
That's
in.
still, at least you got a good point guard. That's better than, Elfrid Payton that they were trotting out there last year. And want to touch on your Nerlens Noel point. $10 million a year is a lot for a backup center. But, he played well in the absence of Mitchell Robinson. Maybe that's just insurance in the event that Mitchell Robinson decides to take his talents elsewhere at the end of the season, because I think he has 1 year left. And so, you got a decent center, viable center for a pretty reasonable price. It's just a matter of if he's going to be sitting behind him and Mitchell Robinson is going to be playing, all the minutes he can, then it's why sign that? The Sixers got Andre Drummond for way cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point, right? It's not just that Noel is a backup center. Great. He provides rim protection. He's good defensively, although maybe not as good as he was a couple years ago, but he's still good.
Right.
3 years to me is ridiculous. $10 million a year is also ridiculous. Look,
that's a lot, man.
You can get these big guys who defend the rim and do nothing else for nothing. Keep signing these guys a 1 year, $3 million deal. Guess who's better than Nerlens Noel defending the rim? Dwight Howard. He maybe doesn't want to go to the Knicks. Guess what? Give him 2 years, $10 million. It's more than he's getting from the Lakers. That's a better deal than signing Noel. It's just a matter of where are you using your resources? And I think that spending $10 million a year on Noel is blasphemous. So I don't want to.
You were right. They were right. They were right there. You could have spent a little bit more and got Rashawn Holmes. He signed a 4-year, $55 million deal to stay with Sacramento. To me, you overpaid a little bit for Nerlens Noel there.
Yeah, I didn't love that move. All right, so 2 last things on the NBA. Then we're going to go over to NFL. What was your favorite signing this offseason thus far? And then what did you think was the worst one thus far?
This one's going to probably be a little bit boring. So is it a new location, or just can they re-sign with the team as well?
Anyone. Favorite
Okay.
and worst.
Favorite. I'm gonna have to go with Alonzo Ball, man. Like I'm really excited to see what him and Zach LaVine do. And honestly, Zach LaVine may not even be there. They better make it a priority to re-sign him. I think that it makes a lot of sense just given his development and where he's taking his game to. I think he's going to be one of the more dynamic shooting guards we're going to have in this league alongside Devin Booker for years to come. So pairing those two together, I think is going to be really exciting. So I'm ready to see if Lonzo can take that next step. He's going to be in a better basketball market now, like similar to where he was too young for the LA scene or the Lakers, kind of got shipped out to New Orleans, which isn't that type. But now he's in Chicago. That's going to be really exciting for that franchise. Worst signing, man. Ooh, that's a tough one here. Kind of like the campaign. No. I'm gonna go with Jimmy Butler at 4 years, 184 million. It's too much money, but I get it. You have to do it. He's the franchise player. He's not going to go anywhere else, so you had to sign him for whatever market value was, and for his caliber of player, given he's All NBA, former All NBA, perennial All Star, it makes sense. But it's just a lot of money for a guy that's got, I don't know, a lot of tread on his tires. This just screams to me he's approaching that Luol Deng territory where he just falls off a cliff of production.
Oh man, that's not good when you get compared to Luol. Oh my
I'm
god,
scared for him. I'm scared for him.
I still have nightmares about the Lakers signing him and Mozgov.
Oh, they paid Mozgov for so long and Luol Deng.
Oh my god, I think they're still paying Luol Deng like $5 million a year or something like that. It's
Somehow
ridiculous.
they finessed that Bobby Bonilla type deal, man. We
Exactly,
just can't pay for not doing shit.
Oh my god, I still have nightmares about that. I'm also really excited for Lonzo. I think that the small ball lineup that the Bulls can run out there with, let's see, Lonzo, Caruso, DeRozan, Levine, and Vucevic is like that's a lot of fun. I'd be excited to see a lot of their small ball lineups and how they utilize them this upcoming season. My least favorite moves of the offseason, we already talked about my favorite and my least. My favorite was Patty Mills, I think, or Malik Monk, like the cheap deals that could hit really big. And my least favorite is whatever the Knicks are doing. I'm not I'm not gonna
All
curse too much,
encompassing the Knicks.
what the 120 million or 140 million dollars that they spent on D Rose, Nerlens, and Fournier for a combined 10 years. Get that the hell out of here. I'm not sorry. Sorry. You guys did a great job last offseason, but you guys ruined it all this offseason. It is
And it's funny because
trash.
they were doubling down on Worldwide West, Leon Rose.
Yeah.
You know, they got all these well, not even basketball wise, but just general influencers to get people to come to the Mecca. And you get Evan Fournier and Nerlens. No, oh, God.
If
I
you
like
want
Kemba in New York is great, but everything else, nah.
But just sign all these guys. If you want to overpay them, it's fine. Give them 1 year deals. Create an
Right.
opportunity for you guys to go get a superstar in a couple of years. Like you said, you have all these guys who are really plugged in, who know all of these superstars really well. Give yourself opportunities year after year to go take these guys out to dinner. Try to wine and dine them. Get these guys in the Mecca. Instead, you got 10 years with a bunch of trash. What are you doing? What are you doing? It makes no sense.
They're nicking.
I'm sorry.
Knicks are nicking, man. Knicks are back to nicking. That's all I could say
God.
about it. Oh, I got one other honorable mention. Zach Collins got a nice little contract by the Spurs. This dude hasn't stepped on the floor in like 3 years. Granted, he got a 3-year, $22 million deal, which probably speaks to that. But I'm just surprised he got that much interest. Like, I'm surprised the Spurs took the flyer on him rather than trying to develop another player. But yeah, that dude just hasn't shown anything. He's just constantly looking great on the sidelines with his slick back hair, rooting everybody on, not doing shit. He's always on the shelf.
I think the last time I saw him play was at Gonzaga. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure about that. I don't remember one game that he played on the Blazers. Not one. Like, what was his best moment on the Blazers? Like wearing
Literally
a blazer on the sideline?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, it's great. Oh shit.
the Indianapolis Colts, Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson both go down with the same exact injury. I don't know how that happens, but they're both out 5 to 12 weeks. For fantasy, obviously, this is going to be really important for guys like Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman. If you're in deeper leagues, they're tight ends, Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox. If you're a dynasty, Kyle Granson. Guys like that, I'm going way down with Marlon Mack, everybody. They're all in like deep shit right now. So what were your thoughts on the two injuries? Where do you think the Colts go from here? And specifically, how do you think it affects JT's draft stock? Because he's the one that's really important here.
Ooh, how to unpack this one from the beginning. So, as an Eagles fan, I feel great that we offloaded the off-injured Carson Wentz. Now the Indianapolis Colts get to enjoy their experience with Carson. It's already begun. You know, we've seen timetables of anywhere from 5 to 12 weeks. I don't even know what that means. To me, that just means stay the hell away and redraft. You know, and he would have probably been, you know, a second QB backup type of guy on a redraft roster. In Dynasty, hopefully you picked up Eason because I think he's going to be the one that's going to step in there unless they sign a veteran. We heard rumblings that Phillip Rivers is keeping himself in condition. Maybe he makes a return. I don't think it's going to be the Colts. Probably someone that's more in desperation, closer to the playoffs. That's a contending team. I think makes more sense. But, you know, I think that the Colts are probably going to be looking on the wire for some kind of quarterback to replace him because Carson can't be relied upon. Granted, it's probably in their best interest that they're not giving up a first-round pick for him playing upwards of 75% of the snaps or going to the playoffs. So that bodes well. But, you know, a first round becomes a second round. Either way, I think that they'd want to have Carson on the field. So as much as that was a big impact on their offense, losing Quentin Nelson potentially for longer is even worse because this guy is one of the best guards in the league, bar none. The guy's a monster, just bull rushes and bulldozes over anything that's in front of him. And I've already just read a report that he's trying to aim for the beginning side of that timetable, that 5 to 12 week recovery time. So for me, I actually have more optimism of Quentin Nelson returning quicker than Carson Wentz, who was apparently fixing an injury that had been there for a while, which is very concerning to me. Like, I don't even know what the hell is going on with his foot right now. So stay the hell away from him. As it pertains to JT stock, you got to knock him down a couple notches. I don't know that I'm going to bounce him out of into the second round quite yet, but I think he's easily moved from, like, in my rankings, the 7 to 8 range to more of the 10 to 12 range. But I still think he's worthy of a first round pick just because he's going to get volume. And if anything, if they have a shitty, you know, backup like quarterback that really can't throw the ball, they're going to be very reliant on the run. They still have a very good offensive line, and I think there's a very good chance he's still going to be a very good back this year. No worse than like a Nick Chubb. Like, I think that, you know, Baker Mayfield wasn't that great until he really got his stride and really trusted his offensive line to protect for him. And before that, he was just handing off the ball. And I think that that's what the Colts are still going to do. They're a running team. They were going to be a run first team anyway. So, you know, not take Taylor down a couple notches, but don't get crazy with it. If he falls to the second round, scoop him immediately because that's just really good value.
Yeah, I was a little scared. Well, I was not scared at all when Carson went down for JT stock, and he already started dropping ADP wise. And
Yeah.
you get him kind of the early or mid part of round 2 based on the Wednesday. I thought that was crazy. I think I maybe dropped him one spot. It shouldn't have mattered. Their offensive line, like you said, was still elite. They're going to give him the ball. He's going to tote the rock a lot, especially late in games when the defense wears down. He's still going to be awesome. I thought the Chubb comparison was really good. Derrick Henry, same type of thing. Get to the fourth quarter, give him the ball. He's going to go score touchdowns, break off long runs. And I think he's going to be more involved in the passing game, especially if you have a rookie like Eason. Like, the dump-offs become a lot more prevalent. So
yeah,
I thought that his fantasy value was still the same. The Quentin Nelson thing scared the shit out of me. If he's out for, let's say it's 12 weeks, the high end, that means he misses the first 8 weeks of the season. That's a really big deal. I don't know if the Colts can overcome that, and their offensive line is still good around him, but, I mean, that's the key cog there.
right.
So what do you do with JT then? I would definitely drop him probably 4 or 5 slots. I think probably middle of the second round in redraft is probably the right spot. If you get to the end and he's still there, scoop him. but I think you get to around 16 to 18 is probably the range there. But yeah, I do have concerns if Nelson is out for 8 weeks. I think that JT not a bust, but maybe not getting quite the value you'd want out of a second running back. So that concerns me a little bit. In
Yeah. Do you
terms
have
of
any? Do you have any
go for it.
concern about the timeshare in terms of like Naeem Hines and Marlon Mack? I don't really. I think that
Not really.
that was more of a Phillip Rivers always liking those scat back type guys to have the dump off. Whereas I think you're going to see the ascension of Jonathan Taylor, similar to Saquon. Like just give this guy, he's a 3-down back, give him the rock, and if you need to spell him on occasion, sure, that's okay. But I think he's still going to get a bulk of the carries and see more work in the passing game this year.
Yeah, so I'm not really concerned about it. I'd be concerned if I was drafting him as a top 5 guy, but no one's drafting him like that.
Yeah,
In the middle of the second
right,
round, everyone's dealing with the timeshare. So
sure,
it's fine. He's still going to get a ton of volume. They're going to run the ball a lot. They've run the ball a lot traditionally with a rookie backup, or I guess second year backup quarterback starting for them. They're going to run the ball more. I think it's fine. If Nelson is actually there by week 3 or 4, I think you're going to extract the value that you want out of JT.
agreed.
Philadelphia. But I think that he would be the perfect fit there because obviously he knows the offense. He can throw the ball down the field. You don't have to see what you have in Jacob Eason because you probably have nothing. And you'd stay on track for a while with Foles. It would be really awkward. You have to get everybody to buy into that situation. But the Bears clearly don't need him or want him on the team. You could trade away a 6th-round pick for him and probably get him back as long as you eat a little bit of the contract. The Colts have money. They're not worried about that. So I think that would be the perfect marriage. But you got to get everybody to be okay with it, and I'm not sure that's going to happen. And the Colts might want to see what they have in Eason. We'll
Yeah,
see.
it's that's got to be just a huge burn to Carson Wentz's ego, especially if Foles comes in, they're successful, they ball out, then it's like, oh, do you go back to Carson? Of course you do, but he's always going to be looking over his shoulder. He's already been there, and while I think the marriage makes complete and utter, it just makes sense. Frank Reich has the experience with Nick Foles. He's a plug and chug guy. He's not going to get any time on Chicago now that they have Andy Dalton and Justin Fields there. It makes sense. Go get some value for a guy that's always had a success really coming off the bench. Like he's never good as a starter, but when he comes off the bench, someone gets hurt, he always seems to ball out. So I think it makes a lot of sense. But we'll see what they do. I'm really curious.
I think my anticipation is they're going to stick with Eason at least for all 3 of which I think would be interesting and perhaps even better than Wentz would be in this offense. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I personally, as a Duck guy, I would love to see Mariota there. I think it'd be a great fit. I'd love to see him be coached by Frank Reich. I think that Minshew actually would probably be pretty good there too. I think that any quarterback that has some skills would be good under Reich. But
yeah, it's interesting that you chose. It's interesting you chose 2 guys that are capable of running the ball in Minshew and Mariota. I think that would be really explosive, especially you put that with JT. You add another rushing threat behind there, man. I think that's really gonna. Anytime you have that read the read option there, that opportunity is just going to be great for any running back. But yeah, I would love to see Minshew get another shot because clearly he's not going to beat out Trevor Lawrence, and Mariota is just kind of stuck behind Derek Carr. But part of me is like, I got to feel like Gruden signed him to that decent deal, thinking that Derek Carr was eventually going to tank, and he just hasn't yet. But like, how long is his leash going to be in this second year of his regime? Because if the Raiders go down 3 games, I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing the call of get Mariota in there. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think that I would rather have Mariota under Frank Reich than John Gruden at this point, from my standpoint. But
Yeah.
we'll say, all right, let's finish up the podcast. Let's do the top 10 wide receivers in fantasy this season. I'll let you start off the rankings. I'll let you go number one.
My number one, I gotta go with Tyreek Hill, man. I think he's on the best offense in terms of having the best quarterback. There's another. I think that's probably the best stack you can get out there. He showed last year his ability to score touchdowns, which I think was really the huge boost to his fantasy value. Previously, obviously he's good deep threat. He can hit you between the seams and take any long run. He also adds some depth in terms of his abilities just to stay on the field. He was very healthy throughout all season. I think you have a really reliable wide receiver there as a wide receiver one. And to me, with Patrick Mahomes, he's the best receiver on the board.
All right, you leave me with Davante Adams, which I'll take, who I actually had at number one, close between 1 and 2 with Tyreek. Davante is all about Rodgers is back, and there's no number 2 wide receiver still. Davante is going to get the ball. He was awesome last year. As long as he's healthy, he's going to dominate.
Yep.
Rodgers, this is the last dance. This is the comeback tour, and
it is.
I think it's dangerous to now bet against the Packers all offseason. Hesitant to get in on the Packers. Don't know what's going to happen with Rodgers. Rodgers is back in Green Bay. Let's go. Aaron Jones to the roof. Robert Tonyan, go and draft him. Davante Adams to the freaking moon. So that would be my pick at number 2. You got number 3.
I like it. I'm going to go Stephon Diggs, man. I think the rapport that he showed with Josh Allen last year, this guy's a stud, bona fide wide receiver one. I have him above DeAndre Hopkins, mainly because, they don't have very many passing options in Buffalo right now. They got rid of John Brown. Maybe you'll see the ascension of Gabe Davis, which I'm really excited for. I think he's a really good value late in redraft leagues, but Cole Beasley's probably not going to play. Let's be honest, like this whole anti-vaccine thing and just his ego. Like something's going to happen there, but I don't think he's going to be there. So they have no tight end really. It's going to be feed Stephon Diggs, man. I'm ready for it. Jason will be back in just a moment. While I'm here, my number 5, Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is going to ball out with Matt Ryan this season as the number 1 wide receiver, only with Kyle Pitts to compete for targets with Julio Jones out of there. Lock it in. And 6, I'll go DeAndre Hopkins. I know it's spicy, but those guys are all going to flame out.
Dude, I don't know what happened, but okay.
Welcome back.
We're back. We're back. All right. So I don't know if you heard me at number 4. I'm taking Calvin Ridley. I think he's gonna get 150 targets this year, probably over 100 catches, 1,300, 1,400 yards, probably double-digit touchdowns. Just based on the volume and the fact that Atlanta's defense is going to stink, he's my guy. He would be my pick at number 4, and I think there's the upside of him being the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy this year.
I like it, and that's exactly why. While you were taking a quick break, I was teasing Calvin Ridley. So I'm glad we're on the same page there.
Nice.
Number 5, number 5. I'm gonna go DeAndre Hopkins. Man, he's fallen far enough. With Kyler Murray early in the season, he was the number wide receiver 1 through the first 7-8 weeks of the season before he went down with that AC sprain injury, which kind of affected his throwing motion. You get him for a full 17 games, man. Woo! D-Hop's going to be cooking, and I'm not worried about Rondale Moore being there. I'm not worried about AJ Green. He's still going to be a target hog regardless.
All right, number 6, tough one here for me. I'm between 2 former teammates. I'm going to go DK Metcalf over AJ Brown here. just because he doesn't have Julio on his side. Honestly, I think the production and the volume is probably going to be very close to the same. I would just rather have the number one upside of him versus Lockett instead of having to compete with Julio, who is Julio. If he's healthy, he's going to get a lot of targets. So I will go with DK.
Yeah, I like that pick. And, for the next one, I'll go AJ Brown. Despite having Julio Jones over there, I think he's still going to be the alpha here. And I think he's going to have one of the best seasons that he's had to date. Obviously last year he still had 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, but I think you're going to see upside of, 12, 1,300 yards with another 10 touchdowns, especially when the Titans are just going to be blowing people out, man. This is a really good team, running the ball, passing the ball. Tannehill finally has the weapons on the outside and the perimeter to actually stretch the field. And I think you have a great tandem in Julio and A.J. Brown, enough to propel him into a top 10 wide receiver.
All right, number 8, Justin Jefferson. For the same reason, he is going to be awesome in his second year. They're going to throw the rock all over the place. I think that you see a little bit of an Adam Thielen decline this season, especially in the red zone where he was really successful last year. I think Justin Jefferson gets a lot of those red zone targets this year. And I think that he's going to have a massive season, top 5 fantasy upside for me.
I like it. So number 10, is this number 10?
You got number 9.
God damn, I can't count today. Number 9, I'm going to go DK Metcalf's already off the board, correct?
Yeah.
I'm going to go Allen Robinson here then. I like him over Terry McLaurin. I think that was the only other option that I was considering here. And I trust, despite, we don't know whether it's going to be Justin Fields or Andy Dalton in this quarterback carousel in Chicago. One thing's for sure is that Allen Robinson has balled out with really bad quarterbacks in all of his career. So I don't think that that's any reason to bump him down on this list. He's proven that he can easily see 150 plus targets. He's not going to really be competed with many other people, other sides besides Darnell Mooney. He's still going to be the alpha in this offense and the primary target getter. So I love him here.
All right, number 10. I was going to go with Terry McLaurin because I have him ranked 9th here, but I'm going to switch this up to the guy who has absolutely dominated practice thus far, who is my darling in terms of fantasy football this year, who I've taken in every league thus far. CeeDee Lamb. My guy. I think that Lamb is going to have an absolutely massive season in his second year in the league. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as a top 10 wide receiver by the end of the year. Dallas' defense is going to stink. They're going to throw the ball all over the place. Amari is going to get his targets, but CeeDee Lamb is a guy who could easily catch 90 passes for 1,300 yards and have 10 touchdowns this year. Absolutely. And you see him practice every single day. If anyone's on Twitter, he's dominating. Now, does practice mean anything right now? Maybe not. You're playing against the Cowboys defense. Everybody scores against the Cowboys defense. But given what he did last year and given how much they're going to have to throw the ball and given the fact that he's going to have Dak back, this is a massive, massive season incoming for CeeDee Lamb. So give me my guy at number 10 overall here.
2 people that I feel like their draft stock has risen as a result of training camp. It is CeeDee Lamb, number 1. Number 2 is T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins is going to be the best out of that trio in Cincinnati. He's these one-handed grabs. I got to get hands catchers. That's all I want. All these body catchers, no, that's not real. You got to get the guys that got the hands, and these guys have mitts. CeeDee Lamb is a dynamic player. Love what the upside that he brings. I think he's going to be way better than Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup this year.
I love it. All right, that does it for us this week. We will be back next week with a full fantasy football preview. Until next time, Dan, thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you later.
Peace.